The legendary Hall of Famer Cal Ripken Jr. I'm Barry Kibrick. Cal holds the one record in baseball that most agree will never be broken when he passed Lou Gehrig's previous record and played in 2,632 consecutive games. Cal is admired not only for his relentless determination, but also for his unparalleled integrity. With his book, Get in the Game, he shares with us his 8 elements of perseverance that we can all apply to our own lives.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of
You
corruption.
don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and it's the first thing to do.
Cal Ripken Jr., I have to tell you, this is a true pleasure. The crew, the staff, everybody has been excited just knowing that you're going to be with us today. Thank you, just right off the top.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm going to begin with an interesting thing of how the book takes shape. And you just told me it was a lot of it due to your co-author, Donald Phillips, the way you tie in some of the things with Lou Gehrig. Obviously, so the viewers, they already do know, you broke a record that people thought would never be broken. Now I think we could almost assume it will never be rebroken. But the comparisons between you and Lou Gehrig are not only the deep values, but even wild coincidences between the two careers.
Well, when Don Phillips and I came together, I already had the real guts of the book in place. He refined it, he expanded on some ideas, he challenged me with stories and pulling things out. But it was his idea. He said, you know, I want to interweave a thread of Lou Gehrig. And in really researching Lou Gehrig, it's uncanny, all the similarities that you guys shared, not just from a values standpoint, but it kind of connects an old school sort of value that goes back. But the basketball thing, for example, when in the off season, I couldn't stand the word training. You know, I had to really get myself in shape physically or whatever else, but training meant work. And so I needed to find a way to stay in shape. And I loved playing basketball. And basketball was a way that I stayed in shape. And Lou Gehrig virtually had the same sort of logic. You know, I played basketball to stay in shape in the off season. You need to make it fun so you continue to do it all the time.
Well, that's what we've learned from all the greats. Gretzky as well, you know, Michael Jordan, yourself, Lou Gehrig. It's those that played the game. In fact, I remember, you know, yourself, you say the same thing as Gretzky did. I never practiced, I played.
That's it. I mean, that's a good way to look at it, because when you love something, and that's another thing that's in the book as well, is when you love something so much, it's not perceived as work. You go out there and play, you enjoy it, you do it for fulfillment and the joy that you just love it that much.
You know, I'm going to get into all 8 rules of perseverance, but I'll tell you, my favorite Lou Gehrig comparison?
Sure.
I thought the fact that the first base that you both stole, home plate, no one steals home practically, yet the two of you, the first time you stole a base, both of you stole home.
Well,
I don't know, that's just amazing.
It is amazing because, you know, I wasn't known for the stolen base. I would imagine Lou might have stole a base strategically from time to time to help their team win, but that wasn't part of my game at all. But stealing home, I ask a lot of the people, do you know what my first stolen base was? And they all think, you know, what could it possibly be? And it was home. It was actually a trick play where the left-hander is on the mound and he's facing away from me, looking at the guy at first base, first and third. I take off running. The guy at first base takes off running and distracts him just enough to give me a chance to slide in home plate safe. And that's exactly what happened.
It's again, you know, they say there's no such thing as coincidence. Maybe they're right. As I said, I'm going to get into the 8 values, but I want to start with something that even preceded them, and it was these words. Some of my best games were when my expectations were a little lower, and I ended up pushing myself to perform. One of the things I've learned is that high expectations are sometimes the worst thing for a person to have. Not high desires, because you want to strive, but it's the lower expectation that sometimes makes you grounded and allows you to really push your performance, and you seem aware of that.
Well, I think I found that out through injury. Number one, that sometimes I had a little injury or something that dinged me up a little bit. And then I thought, well, I'm not 100%, but let me go out and plug through and see what happens. So then, therefore, I allow the game to come to me. And all of a sudden, you're more relaxed. The ball comes to you. There's more clarity when the ball comes to the plate. And all of a sudden, you stay within yourself. And I think my biggest battle that I had was I came outside of myself periodically, and I always had to remind myself, you're good enough, your talent's good enough. Don't try so hard. Let it come to you, let it unfold.
You know what I love? I want to play off on what you just said, and that is especially for the viewers, and especially when we have someone here like a Cal Ripken. And we think of you, and as we think of all great athletes and great talents, that somehow they magically have it. And one thing you do in the book is you let us see your weaknesses and how many lessons you yourself had to learn. So I'm going to start right off with perseverance, lesson number 1, and that is the right values. You say success starts with hard work, and those values that shaped your life were the same values that allowed you to play all those games and play them with this passion and desire.
Well, certainly there has to be a connection between you putting in the time and you working towards something and your success. Hard work is an old school value. I know that I had a good work ethic because I was willing to actually put in the time and willing to practice. But when I started to think about it, how do you teach that? How do you send the message to your own kids? Do you do it through words? And the answer is no, you do it through actions. And my dad was a worker. He was someone that rolled his sleeves up and got in the garden. Some of the tools that we had to work with at home to do the chores around the house, we didn't have a normal wheelbarrow. My dad reinforced an old wagon that we had as kids, and we used that to carry away rocks from the garden. Edging the driveway, we talk about that in there. You would think when you have a picture of edging the driveway, you have a nice electric edger, or you have something that you roll up and down the thing while you stand up. We were on our hands and knees with a string and an old dull hatchet. We were making angle cuts at the grass to actually make the line. And at the end of the time, Dad would step back and say, now look at that. What do you think of that? You did that with your own hands. What do you think of the work? And it looked really good. So it gave us a sense of pride that we knew that we could impact on something through our hard work.
Now, it's funny, you say in the same segment with the right values is not only this appreciation of your own hard work, but to appreciate the values and the excellence of others. You put that as part of the right value, and I thought that was interesting because a lot of people, especially those striving for the top, sometimes want to put other people down in order to get there. You make it very clear here that you need to admire the excellence of others.
Well, I think that in general, that when you look at excellent baseball models and you see dynasties, a lot of people feel like, oh, it's so unfair that the same team is winning. But I've learned to appreciate the excellent hard work and all the things. So, I mean, if you see the quality of work, and Dad used to say, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. If it's not worth doing right, then let's not waste our time on doing those things. So again, he taught us to admire the work of others, and at the same time, it's no weakness towards yourself when you say, hey, that's a good job. And the same way when you're competing with another team, instead of making excuses that we didn't play as well as we could to win the game, give the other person credit. Admire the fact that the pitcher threw a good game. Say that he made good pitches on me, he won this battle. There's always tomorrow.
You also show us how to use that to your real advantage. I'm going to get to that when we get there. But within the same chapter, you actually ask yourself a question after you make a statement. You say, honesty and integrity. Honesty and integrity, how does it apply to this? You say it builds trust in others. And that goes back to even your competitors. When you operate with honesty, and now I see that smile because that's how you even got some of the things inside on them, is by them trusting you, and you're not deceiving them.
Well, it was really interesting is trying to figure out which is honorable and which is not in a sport where sometimes stealing signs are considered good. So we started to examine, and Don Phillips really enjoyed this part. That came out in the book, very loud and clear. I started to go on a rampage when we were talking about structuring this particular chapter, and I remember saying, I hate the hidden ball trick. I absolutely hate it. But Lou Gehrig love the hidden ball trick. That was one of those things that there's a thread in there, but I hate it because it works once. And it works once, and then from now on, the rest of the league hears that they can't trust you. And many times there were small little conversations on the baseball field that would give me information that I could use over and over again. So there were certain things that I knew that I could build up value. And one of those things was not to deceive the runner. Make sure that you looked out for him, so that when you asked him a question, there was a sense of trust. For example, I, on occasion, and I didn't write this in the book, so this is an extra. Sometimes when a guy was on second base and a member of my team that I didn't know just came on the scene, they held the ball in their glove, and they kind of went away, and so you could see for a minute that the hidden ball trick was starting to be put in play. I would say, hey, stay right here on the bag. Second baseman's got the ball. Now, that might seem really weird. You might think that you're a traitor. But at the same time, my value to being able to talk to that guy at second base was far greater for that day and for every other day in the future than having embarrassed him and break down the trust.
And by the way, may I share with the viewers how that trust played off later on is you would get inside information, not that they would be even deceiving, but they felt like they could open up to you, and you're able to use the slightest, that's what I found so amazing. You were able to use the slightest bit of information and turn it into a major advantage. I guess it could only be at the level that you play at, because little things like that don't seem to help everybody, but you even were able to get the jump on the ball if you knew. You would call your own signals sometimes. I mean, it's odd for the shortstop or third baseman to do that.
Yeah, for the viewers, I'll say, for example, if a guy was stealing and the hitter fouled a ball off and it went straight back to the backstop, you would have to ask yourself, was that a straight steal or was that a hit and run attempt? Now, if it's a hit and run attempt, that's a play that's choreographed by the signals. It goes to the hitter, it goes to the runner, and a hit and run generally is tried to hit behind the runner. So if I knew the difference between a hit and run and a steal, then I could recognize the pattern of that behavior and I could deal with it accordingly. So if there was some sort of doubt, I'd wait till the guy got to second base and I would say, guy, you got a bad jump, for a steal. And he goes, that wasn't a steal, that was a hit and run. And I'd say, okay, and he'd go back. That's the sort of rapport. And then I'd put that in my memory banks and say, okay, that was a planned hit and run, which came from the manager, so you remember that sort of sequence and that plan. A lot of times steals are said they're on their own, so the guy on first base will run whenever he wants, but I needed to know the difference, and so you use your trust that you build up in other ways. For example, that same runner might steal on a pitch. The guy swings really hard and fouls it off behind the thing. I say, stand up, stand up. Don't slide, don't slide. They trust me in the fact that they're going to stand up, and they appreciate the fact because sliding is hard on your body. And they run back to first. Now, you can ever deceive them on that one either, because you can do it once. You tell them to hold up, and the ball's in play. You've tricked them, in a way, and it doesn't work out so well for them. But they'll never really talk to you and give you that little information that you need.
What's so great about you and the sport? You could never watch the game and realize all of that is going on. That is what's so beautiful about it. I'm going to go into the next category, and that is the strong will to achieve. This is number 2 in the rules of perseverance. And the one I want to hit on particular is one that, again, I just know this book is designed to teach kids values as well as people in business. And the one that is so important is this ability so that you personally do not fear failure. And as you say, even the great Hall of Famers are only, hitting that ball 3 out of 10 times at best. So they're failing 7 times. That ability so that you just do not fear failure is one of those important values.
Well, exactly, is that, and there was a lesson that I told in the book. A lot of people will fear the outcome, will fear the failure, then therefore they won't try or they won't get in the game, so to speak, with the book. When I first started going to the All-Star games, it was such a new environment. In the big league All-Star games, you go there, you get with the game's greatest players. You start to think, God, the whole world is watching me now. I just don't want to mess up. I don't want to mess up, so let me just be careful. Let me take an ultra-conservative sort of approach. And if I get out here without any hits, but I didn't make any errors and I didn't look bad, then that's good. And so I started doing that, and I wasn't performing. I wasn't getting any hits. And I started to think, what am I doing? You know, in order to succeed, I have to be willing to take a risk. I have to be willing to fail. That means I might swing at a bad pitch over my head or in the dirt, and I might look foolish on one pitch. But in order to actually have success, I got to be willing to air it out. I got to be willing to be a little more of a risk taker. And then I started hitting in the All-Star games, and things started to come around. So if you're ultra conservative and you're frozen in your attempts to be successful because of failure, you're never going to achieve what you really need to achieve. You need to let it go.
Now, in the same category of perseverance, and I if you didn't put this in the book, I promised I would never have said this. I don't want to besmirch the great Cal Ripken, but as I said, the beauty of sometimes seeing a person's flaws and their idiosyncrasies as they learn gives people that support. And one of the things you say here is desire and its flip side. And I want people to know that you cheated your blind grandma in playing cards. Now, you learned a lesson from that, but when I read that, I just went, wow, what a leap to the Cal Ripken we know today.
Well, as a young person, you're shaped to who you are based on your experiences. And some of your experiences, I wanted to win so desperately bad, and that I would actually do almost anything to win. Now, in this particular case, my grandmother taught me how to play canasta. In canasta, you would draw cards, and you had 2 cards each time you would draw. But if you drew more than 2 cards, you had a better chance of getting, better cards to win a game. So I would periodically take more cards than I was supposed to. My grandmother couldn't see really that well, but I still think she saw a whole lot better than we let on. And it didn't. The lesson I learned was it wasn't fulfilling to win that way. And the only way you can win, and that was a sense of honor when you play, and it kind of goes along with the other values in there. When you win because you look at the cards right or you play the game the right way, then that feels better. So it's far better for you to do it within the rules and do it where you test yourself than it is by trying to find shortcuts or cheating. It's not as fulfilling.
Now another thing, and again, just so people know that this is it's continuously a growing process, is that when you first get in position, was it third or shortstop first? Third, right?
Came to the big leagues as
third baseman. And you're known in your career as such a great fielding third baseman and shortstop as you transferred into that position. But what people don't realize is that first time out, 32 throwing errors. Now again, though, you're laughing, but what you did, as you say, turning that negative into a positive. Share that.
That's not too dissimilar to a lot of great players that come into professional ball, is that the speed of the game goes a little faster. And the rhythm of you being able to catch the ball and throw these great athletes out at first base, I was struggling with that. And so I would hurry my throw, and I wouldn't put myself in the right position. And sure, I made 32 errors. I don't think all of them were throwing errors, most of them were. But 32 errors in a 60-game schedule when you first come into rookie ball, that's not too good. So I know they realized that I had potential, but I needed to work on that, and I needed to get past that. And one of the things that I honestly believe in is that you need to analyze your successes and your failures, and you should really practice your weaknesses.
You added also that when you have a supportive wife, you're able to do those. You wanted to make sure, I know I'm skipping to one of the other areas, but playing off of what you said, is that there is no real separation when you love what you're doing between what you do for a living and the life you lead.
Yeah, I think that many people make the mistake of not achieving balance in their lives, I think, because they see it as 2 separate lives. You're the constant force in your life. If you love what you do, it's all around your life, and you got to figure out how to make it work in all areas. It's not easy, and I wouldn't say that I have it mastered. I wouldn't even say I'm close. But I think the first part of the awareness of that is that of achieving balance is certainly say that, look, I'm the constant in both of these lives. Let's not separate your business life or your baseball life from your personal life.
Something now, though, in line with that I want you to lead on is this. Many people fail because they are unaware of the core issues confronting them. This is one of the times you use a business analogy as well, but in a sense, that awareness, it goes back right to that. You're not necessarily aware of your core issues. That is probably one of the first things we all have to do.
Well, I mean, if you look at a problem and you think this is the problem and you go to fix it, if that's not the problem, then you haven't fixed it. So really understanding what the core issue is, why you're not having success, and really going back to the root of that is the key issue. Sometimes we use expressions nowadays that that guy gets it, or that player gets it. We can't define what gets it mean, but I would lend an opinion that says gets it means they really see what the clear issue is, and they don't waste a lot of time on these other things that are symptomatic that comes away from that. They look at that issue and solve it right away, so they clearly see what the issue is in front of them, and they're able to fix it pretty quick, which gives them a level of consistency.
Cal, I know I always ask authors if I give out their website, will they respond? But there's no way a person like you could respond to everyone that comes to your website. But I'm going to give it out anyway because I think there's all sorts of things people can get value from it. And it's www.ripkenbaseball.com. That's RIPKEN baseball.com. And with that, I'm going to take us to step 4 of this perseverance, and it is preparation. But again, not just as a general title, something in specific that I want to talk about. Again, what your dad brought to the table. It's the little things that define your value. If you take care of the little things, you never have one big thing to worry about. Preparation, we all know, makes practice, or as you say, perfect practice makes for a great preparation. But that part there, defining those little things that define your value.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be broad, but Dad did say you worry about all the little things and you won't have one big thing to worry about. The perfect practice, and that might be a good way to communicate this thought, is that when Dad first started saying, look, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. And my first thought was, come on, Dad, lighten up a little bit. You know, we need to go out there and have fun, and you go through the routine. It should be fun taking ground balls. Don't take that away from me. But he went on to explain, look, it's better to take ground balls seriously, and you can still have fun doing it, but develop good working habits so that, you know, it's better to take 100, you know, pretty good than take 400 or 500 just messing around. Because when you mess around in practice, you're developing those sorts of habits. So when the game comes on, your natural reaction is how you practiced. So Dad really did drive the point home, perfect practice makes perfect. Doesn't mean that we're perfect. It means that we're trying to develop good habits, and we try to really take those ground balls fundamentally seriously and try to build those habits so then they become reactions in the game.
Cal, number 5 is anticipation. And anticipation, we know if you have the love for the game, you are going to want to and desire for the next opportunity. But you give us this line within anticipation that I think is different from even what we've discussed before. Plan for the end at the beginning, but remember you can't play tomorrow's game until it gets here.
And again, in business, and also we talk about working backwards, but certainly Dad used to always say, and again, it's really interesting how I keep quoting my dad in the book, you can't play tomorrow's game till it gets here. So you might as well just focus on the game at hand. Don't get ahead of yourself. And certainly that served me well. In the consecutive game streak, a lot of people said, how can you play all those games in a row? And I said, I didn't play them, you know, all in a row. I played them one at a time, or 162 at a time, and then we took a rest, and then we had a chance to play 162 more. But I think too many times if we get ahead of ourselves and we start worrying about what's ahead, we forget about what's right in front of us. And really, we have the power and the action to act on what's in front of us. So I guess the wisdom in that sort of response, especially from Dad, is let's worry about today, and then when tomorrow comes, we'll play that game.
You know, our time is almost up, and I'm just not going to let it go. I'm going to make sure we hit everything. But we talked about the trusting relationships and how you developed that. That was number 6. And we talked about 7, which was life management and balancing it all out. So I am going to end our conversation with number 8, and that was the courage of your conviction. And I bring that up because you just said the fact of how did you play those games one at a time. What other people, and finally they began to realize is, once you broke Lou Gehrig's record, you played another 500 consecutive games because you really did just love it. and you proved it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I didn't start out to have a consecutive game streak, and I certainly didn't continue after the record was broken for a consecutive game streak. You know, you bring honor to the game. Your approach to the game should be honest and pure, and your courage of your convictions. I honestly believe that my approach to the game, given to me from my dad, I should show up as a player, ready to play. Put yourself in the hands of the manager, and if he wants you to play, you play. It's that simple, and that was really the secret of being able to play every day. Some people call me stubborn as a result of that, but I really believe that was the right approach. And you know, the courage of your convictions are, you know, when things get tough, when everybody else is kind of weakening around you, you need to stand strong.
You know, you were joking before, and you said, "Boy, I didn't realize how much I quoted my dad." Well, I'm going to end with your dad's quote, if that's okay. Dad was right, you say. If you enjoy the journey, you're going to be more involved, and then you'll always be in the game. Cal, thank you so much for staying in the game.
My pleasure.
My pleasure, and thank you guys for joining us. Now, before Cal leaves, I would like to leave you with these words from Get in the Game. I never felt I had a secret. I just played baseball because I loved the game and because I had been taught certain values and principles that prevented me from backing away from anything. I'm Barry Kibrick. Get in your game, read between the lines, and find the values and principles that will prevent you from backing away from anything. Thank you so much, Cal.
Thank you.
If you'd like a tape of our show or would like to become a member of our book club and receive our weekly email show updates, just write us at barrykibrick@aol.com.